Concepts versus constructs. I'm not gonna lie, I'm doing this very late, so I'm also getting into it. Concepts are ideas, and that's the simple definition I'm gonna be going with. You could make a more complex definition that would be more correct than the one I'm using, but for now it's correct enough. Concepts are intangible, in which they cannot be physically held like you would a cup or maybe some scissors, but you can understand them like how you would understand why a cup works. Concepts are influenced by the environment around us and how we perceive that environment, which is, by in turn, influenced by how the environment around us is. It goes in a loop. We wouldn't value something like authenticity if it didn't exist in our daily lives for us to judge, for us to think about, and for us to ultimately decide is needed. Like, wouldn't even think about authenticity and therefore the concept of truth if it didn't exist in our daily lives, considering there'd be nothing to think about. For authenticity entails the idea that one can tell the truth, and those listening to said truth can also tell the truth without there being a precedent in which one would have to lie, and then thereby everyone else has to lie. We want authenticity because the world itself is ideally run on truths, science, and natural law, and whatever so happens to be truthful. And things being shown as they are allow us to give solutions to them in case of those things being shown as they are problems. Like, for example, a broken cup. Going back to the cup, if it's broken, that means I have to fix it with glue. Instead of saying it broke on its own or something didn't want to exist, I could say I dropped it while there was liquid in it. A solution to that, which would be just as honest as me saying I dropped it, would be don't drop it and don't have liquid in it if you do decide to drop it. Or drop it from a very low height if you absolutely need to drop it for whatever reason. And before I go on to constructs, let me make something very clear. Constructs being used as an insult isn't the most correct thing, nor is it the most valid thing one can do. Constructs are used as insults because considering the meaning of a construct is an idea that is implemented into reality, so that inherently means something had to be thought of and intentionally made to be put into reality by someone else. This is why using it as an insult kind of works. Someone had to make it into existence. It couldn't just exist on its own. Considering something that doesn't exist on its own, for example, the grass outside of your house, doesn't need a reason to exist. It justifies itself by simply existing and playing its role. Constructs needed to be thought out before they were made. They don't exist naturally, so therefore they're invalid. And back to me making something clear about it, that's not a good argument for everything. A lot of bad things are constructs, like racism, hatred, like inequality, gender roles. Those things are constructs, and they aren't the best things in the world. In fact, they're probably the worst things, the former parts of that list. But there are ultimately constructs that are good as well. Education is a good construct. Education as a construct comes from the concept of needing to preserve knowledge, teach it to the next generation, and then use the knowledge on how to gain knowledge, on how to discover things, how to invent things, to do just that, invent and discover new things. Kind of like how the discovery of fire leads us up to AI today. Discovery of fire lets us cook food, boil water, keep ourselves warm, so that we actually survive the next day. To then invent things like different types of foods, which can satisfy different nutrient needs by requiring the same process, cooking, but from different ingredients. And then thereby, we also use heat to then boil metal, so that we can then make it malleable, make alloys out of it, or just make them into different shapes. You wouldn't really boil them, you just probably make them close to melting. Things like bronze, which is how we get the Bronze Age. Discovery of fire led up to all of that, and if the idea behind fire being discoverable via fiction, if that wasn't kept around, neither would half the technology we have today be kept around. And specifically the bronze part, that leads to more metals being made, metals that work in our electronics to this day. That's what makes education a construct. The idea that needs to be knowledge that we keep, knowledge that we teach. And it's a good, very sound concept, which is why it exists today, education. However poorly it's executed, however poorly it's implemented, and however poorly it's designed, is behind a good concept. Money is also a construct that comes from a concept. And that's what makes constructs. They are physical representations of concepts and physical implementations of said concepts into daily life. Money being the concept of assigning value to things that are of a varying abundance. Gold isn't as abundant as water, and yet that can be visualized and tangibilized via money. Gold may cost $100 per bar, while water of that same volume barely costs cents or ideally anything. I'm not saying that's the real life value for gold and water. Those are just examples. In fact, those values might be completely wrong. Gold may cost a lot more than that, but we'll go with it. Concepts and constructs can be good and bad. Again, with my point on why you shouldn't use construct as an insult. Even the good and bad share characteristics of the other. Education is both good and bad, as in good that it sets a precedent that one should learn, and one should try to understand the world around them so that they can then use it to enrich their own life. While bad in that it is terribly executed, if for some reason now decides what job you can have and thereby your future, and then it's also bad in that the things taught to you via education aren't always the most useful things. Like, I guarantee you not having internet grammar in day-to-day life wouldn't be the most important thing. Thanks to computers being able to correct that grammar, and then maybe in conversation use slang and maybe improper grammar, but it works considering you're talking to understand, not talking to write things on a page. Again, education is both good and bad, and that's how constructs are overall. It's interesting to me that constructs and concepts just rule so much of our life, because both stem from just hormones and electric signals in our brain. That's really it. That's really what it is. Electricity in our brains alongside hormones via our neurons. These make thoughts. These seemingly insignificant things. Just look at the size of a neuron. It is small as all hell. These insignificant things, looking at it with just the eyeballs, you would see them as small, but yet they contribute to the way we breathe and act on this earth. And this isn't some anthropocentric process, anthropocentric meaning human-centered. Any living being with neurons does this. For example, your dog, maybe a zebra, maybe a bird, a snake. Why am I saying maybe? I know these things do that. Small things make a big difference, and that is very figurative when it comes to why concepts and constructs matter so much. Constructs are concepts that became actualized and parts of our daily life. And the fact that constructs are concepts, which are ideas, and thereby hormonal and electrical signals in our brain, makes for a very, very figurative idea you can get from the world. Small things make a big difference. It's exactly why the small details sometimes that seem absolutely useless, like for example, why the Ottoman Empire conquered the Byzantine Empire in 1453, that seem completely useless, can do well when you keep them in your brain to then hopefully make something bigger out of those small lessons. Anyways, this very unorganized Yap session is over. I'll see you later, and hopefully not stuttering every fifth syllable. The maker of this video, aka the editor, aka me, I am coming here right now to say this. My Yap does not conclude the whole video. There's like a bunch of Jujutsu shenanigans gameplay that I have in the background. You can watch that, you can enjoy it, to be honest. By the way, if you want to know what server I played in, it was an infinite ult, no cooldown server, and I was just using Toto's brother's Black Flash the entire time. So if you really want to see me fail to use it, or succeed in using it sometimes, go ahead and watch that. And then maybe me actually trying to use Toto instead of just spamming that 180 damage or 70 damage Black Flash. And the editor's note out. See you, and hopefully you enjoyed the video.